In this video, I want to share with you the process of creating a painting that turned out to be one of the most successful for several reasons. First, I painted it very quickly within an hour while simultaneously teaching a class in the studio. Second, this painting has gained more than 17 million views on. This is an amazing result, and it probably brought me more than 100,000 subscribers. And as a result, I really liked it myself because it turned out almost exactly as I wanted. I wanted to make the painting pretty light without any super precise details. Well, I wanted to paint it with inspiration, lively, boldly, and at the same time to make it all beautiful. And of course, I wanted the emotions I had to be preserved in the painting. That's why I started the work, as you can see, as usual, with the silhouette. I found the silhouette of the girl. Then I immediately applied a thin wash for the background. At the beginning, I don't use white, practically, and lately, I almost never use white. That is, I just mix the colors very thinly, like watercolor, and cover everything as much as possible right away. Ideally, you want to cover the canvas as quickly as possible so that it doesn't distract you later and you don't make tonal mistakes. So, look, once I've found the hair, I move on to the face, sketch out the eyes, mark the shadows on the face, and then I just very loosely wash everything in with watercolor-like paint, you could say, also almost without any white. And notice, once again, lately I've been trying to pay more attention to this. Initially, when we begin applying this color to the face, it appears surprisingly dark. When we've covered everything and there's no white left, it really changes overall. Right before your eyes, it starts to look lighter. This is very important. So it's better to cover this white canvas right away, but in rare cases, you shouldn't cover the white canvas, where you have a really strong glow, and so that this glow, which is almost pure white, will be at the end. To preserve it, it's better to actually keep that glow there, to keep the white canvas, but almost always it's not worth doing that. In the end, look, I covered everything with color. What's notable about this painting, what I managed to do, is that I tried to hit the right tone almost immediately. Even though I didn't use white, I just adjusted the tone with the medium. It's pretty difficult, often because with white we can immediately see the color on the palette. But when we just mix the paint with the medium, it's not clear how dark it's going to be. Well, here we just find it by trial and error. And look, from the very beginning in this case, usually, I immediately sketch out and rub paint everywhere, then gradually use a cloth to highlight some areas and darken others. That is, I kind of create a sculpture this way, I find the forms. But here I almost immediately, actually not almost, I try to get it right from the start. I mean, I don't rub the paint in, I hardly move it back and forth. I try to hit the right spots with the colors right away, and I try to guess the color immediately. So basically, what am I aiming for? To do exactly what I need right away. So we made a quick liquid underpainting, a 5-minute one, even less than 5 minutes, and then I immediately start trying to hit the right spots with thicker paint. Exactly right. Of course, this is much harder to do, but the more you paint, the more you train your eye, the better you'll get at it. But again, even if you're just starting out, it's still worth trying to do things like this, because it opens up your freedom and reveals your creative potential. So right now, look, with every movement I'm trying, as if in a minute someone will take my painting away from me. And that's why with every movement I try to make it literally the finishing touch, with every single movement, without any unnecessary extra actions. So accordingly, if you're just starting to draw, and if it's difficult for you, it's still worth experimenting like this sometimes. It will really help develop your freedom of movement and creativity in your tattoo work. So, and again, what are some of the important points when you're working on this, on a picture? I made the movements. And to make every movement deliberate, that is, I looked carefully without rushing. Then I added some more, looked, and I have some drips right on the hair, some drips on the face, and I'm not in a hurry to remove them. I think maybe they're beautiful, why touch them? So, if I'm not sure about something, I leave it for later. If I'm sure it's beautiful, then of course I try not to touch it at all. At most, just slightly improve things here and there. Well, generally, yes, you start with rougher work first, and then later you get more precise. In this work, I tried to do everything carefully right from the start. I was really attentive from the very beginning. And apparently, that's why it turned out to be so light and airy, a bit rough in some places, yes, but at the same time, overall the painting looks whole and emotional. Basically, every stroke, every brush mark on the painting is almost completely preserved. Nothing is overworked. In the end, by the way, I didn't film the palette here either, but actually the palette for this work is very simple. It's very simple, and basically there's no real point in trying to copy the exact colors that I used in this work. When you're working on your own piece, your tonal relationships will be different anyway. And that's why you'll need to base things on what you have in your underpainting. Well, or will you be looking at your reference? And everything in the painting should already match each other, not just what, for example, I specifically used. In the first session, which lasted 20 minutes, I laid out the shapes, established the tones, the darkest, the lightest. The mid-tone also started to appear more or less. And I already got to the point where I could work with thick paint. The next stage begins, the next session. That's also quite interesting. The fact that I didn't continue working on the painting. Look, I have drips everywhere. I immediately decided to lay down the background I wanted. The only thing is, something didn't work out for me. I mixed too little paint. In moments like this, you need to mix more paint. And also, which is important, I mixed acrylic here, because it's quite difficult to get oil paint to this kind of consistency. Fluid, but still pretty thick. I usually mix with a thinner, but the thinner separates very easily. It's very liquid and it separates from the paint. The thinner will run off and the paint will stay behind. And that's why for things like this, I usually use acrylic right on top of oil. Notice, it's been 20 minutes, the paint hasn't completely dried yet, but I'm already putting acrylic on there. Overall, the technique is likely not very effective because theoretically, acrylic might not adhere as well to the surface on top of oil. But in reality, again, it's all a question of how it will be stored. Acrylic, it's actually very durable, very sticky. So if it sticks, it's very hard to remove. Now look, my paint was running out, so I mixed it with some more water and poured it right on top of this color. The color turned out pretty well. A lot of people immediately wanted to buy this painting from me. I think it's because of the way the background is done.
Mainly. Here.
And when I had already added all these things, the drips, it took about 10 minutes to add them. I'm speeding things up here as there's no need to show this for long. The techniques are straightforward and uncomplicated, I believe. And here's an important point. You can always fix the drips wherever you don't like them. You can remove them, you can add them, and so on. Now, let's move on to the next step. When I started working with oil, I began mixing the paint really thick in chunks to create more texture, to add that kind of relief, that specific texture. At this stage, I tried to add more beautiful colors. By the way, I'm adding green, which for a month in the background was bothering me. It's also very important to unify our drawing with the background, so that the colors are close, or even exactly the same colors are on the face and in the background. And right away the painting blends into the background. It immediately looks more natural when you look at it. Adding green shadows made it instantly more interesting to look at. And again, every brush stroke, I tried to make each one distinct and beautiful.
This stage took me about 10 minutes, so in the end.
Half an hour has passed for the whole work. So, but I also did the final touches here when I added thick white, dense, medium, some new ones. It's basically almost finished already. I'm just here adding some small details, adding more beautiful, often medium tones, also quite thickly. In this case, it's a light peach color, then a reddish one on the cheek here. So by adding a bit more complexity in the tones, it makes the painting more interesting. Of course, I tried to make each brush stroke separately, but naturally I also add a bit more highlights. As you can see, I leave alive. Also, the speed here is about 3 times faster than it should be. And already at this final stage, I just take and add with a fine brush. In some places, a bit of linearity, in some places, precise lines, that is, each little detail. I try to work beautifully, but at the same time not overdo it. That's it, you see, I drew the teeth a little, drew the eyelids a bit, added some light and midtones to the chin. There. Well, and actually now my teeth have become more defined. After that, actually, I didn't record anymore. I adjusted the forehead a little, made it a bit smaller, meaning I moved the hairline down a bit and added a bit of background at the top. Because it turned out that in the video it looked fine, but in real life the forehead was a bit too big and needed to be made smaller. Other than that, everything else stayed the same. I didn't make any more adjustments because often it seems like there's a lot that needs to be fixed. Right now, I can tell you on the video that Veka, the one on the left of us, seems kind of unattractive. You can straighten it out there, but all these adjustments can eventually lead to boring work, so leave some of the work as it is. Something really unfinished, a bit rough in some places. This often attracts the viewer's attention and it gives the painting a certain uniqueness. Here is the result that I got. I hope you like the painting. Write more, experiment, and be freer in your creativity.